Wide rim platters or bowls hold a lot of creative opportunity. I turned this one out of box elder a couple of years ago. It lacked that classical color, red color from box elder, and I wanted just a plain blank palette. Unfortunately, after I turned it and I set it aside, the design muses didn't inspire me to come back and do anything with it until I ran across the folder with all the footage in it, and I thought, this could still be nice video. Let me go ahead and finish this thing up. So today I finally decided what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to true it up, of course. I'm going to dye this, and then I'm going to use some metal leafing, which I've had for several years, for the inside of this bowl. I've used metal leafing sparingly. I haven't used it a whole lot, and did not always have real good results with it. But what I found is the more often you practice, the luckier you get. So let's hope I get lucky today. Hi, y'all. Mike Peace. I'm passionate about wood turning, and I'm here to share with you tips, tricks, and techniques to help you become a better wood turner. So if this is what you're interested in, you know the drill. Click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. So the first thing we're going to do is remount this and clean up the recess and true up the outside. This has gone just a bit oval in 2 years. It's about a 1/4 inch off in one direction. So I'm going to have to clean up the face, clean up this little bead a little bit, but it should be no problem. So I'm going to put a little piece of fun foam on a spindle scrap here that I've profiled to closely match the inside of this little bowl. So I've changed to my Nova Live system with the flat. Actually, it's open here, so it won't. If I've got a little part in the middle, it's extended out. It'll go right in there without any problem. So pretty close. Okay, I like that. Now. So I'm going to use my recess tool and just open this up just a little bit. Turn this down a little bit. Speed about 800. Going to come in here with this recess and just hook it in. Okay, now we've got a nice true side. Let's make sure I've got it dovetailed in there, and that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and it's just a bit deeper. I'm going to make sure this is flattened so it'll sit on the table. We're just going to take a kind of a scraping cut here, see what we can come up with. Just to get a feel for how true that is. It doesn't hurt to put a straight edge on it and make sure it is kind of recessed a little bit so it'll rest on the outer edge. Yeah, I've got a good 1/8 inch recess there, which ought to be fine. All right, now let's see how out of true this is, because I got to clean this up just to give me some feel for it, where to start to cut. Just tool rest just a bit. Actually, I'll bring it in like this. I'm going to come in right here, pick up the cut. Switch this smaller bowl gouge. Okay, I feel like that's running fairly true now. I've got a couple of tool marks I need to get rid of. Let me see if I can't get rid of those. Get rid of some of them a little bit. Okay, I think the rest of that, just little ripples, it'll sand out quite easily. Okay, that's pretty much got it. I think sanding will take care of the rest of it. So I'm going to just put a little bead here and maybe put a couple of V-grooves in the base here. So I'm going to use my trusty point tool and just make a couple little beads here. I've got a couple of tool marks here. I think I'm going to start this with 80 grit. I can't use any abrasive paste because of the dye I'm going to be using, so I've got to just use regular sanding. So let me get my dust collection set up here. I've got it running less than 200 and just kind of get rid of some of these tool marks. And I'll finish sanding off camera. Okay, now that I got it sanded, we can go ahead and reverse chuck it. Pull the tailstock out of the way. Look for the grain direction and orient the jaws accordingly. Put my thumb in the middle to kind of give it a flat push. Put this in here and bring up tailstock support just for a little extra measure of caution while I do the rim. So we're going to use the 1/2-inch bowl gouge, and I'm going to pick up the cut here and start truing this up. Get the speed up a little bit. Open the flute up a little bit. Mostly doing bulk wood removal. Getting some nasty tool marks, but that's just because I don't have the entire surface trued up yet. I'm going to switch back to that smaller gouge. I feel like I seem to do better with that on this particular wood. Now, the rim is running a little out of true. I'm going to just do a bit of a shear scrape here. Alright, I'm switching to my spear point in a shear mode, and I think that will get rid of some of those tiny little ripples. It'll speed up sanding. And that's gotten rid of a lot of this. That'll make it much easier to sand. I've got some sharp edges here. I'm going to touch those with a scraper, but I'm going to let mostly sandpaper take care of those, I think. But let me give that a little bit of a try here so I don't have any sharp edges while I'm working on it. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, I think, is level the height of the bead, since it's a varying height since it went oval. And then we'll take a pass to true it up on the end, a couple passes, true it up on the inside. So get the speed up a little bit. We're going to come in here, and just so it won't kick out on me, this is a technique that I thought I'd worth mentioning. A lot of times when you come in with that bowl gouge, if you're not careful before you making that entry cut, it'll skate on you and damage that rim. One way to deal with that is just take a little, make a little tiny little parting, take a parting tool, make a tiny little parting cut just to establish that shoulder. Yep, and now I can come in, still bracing it, but with that shoulder it's less likely to kick out. Here's the minimum recess for these jaws, and yeah, I'm going to have to take out just a bit more of that bead, unfortunately, to be able to do that, but that's what I'm going to have to do. just about got a nice shape. I'm going to make a dovetail in here for the chuck jaws. And let me think about the best tool to do that with. Might be a skew, but I think it's going to be this recess tool, because it is a dovetail. And if I just come right in right there, okay, I'm going to go ahead and sand this up off camera. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this, I'm going to reverse chuck this to, after I get this done, I'm going to reverse chuck it to clean up the backside. I go through all the grits, sanding this off. So I've got this tiny little recess I put in here that I've measured that'll fit these 75 millimeter bowl jaws. Really nice profile for turning bowls, but because in a recess mode they're larger than 50 millimeter, they're perfect for being able to chuck up something like this where I want to fit it inside a small bowl. And now all I'm really going to do is just soften this edge right here so the recess doesn't show, and clean up the bottom a little bit. Maybe if this is running true, maybe go back in and cut this a little bit deeper. Let's start with that. Let's see how true this runs. Yeah. Excellent. So I'm just going to come in there and deepen that bead a little bit. And now I'm going to take a spindle detail gouge and just come in and ease that corner off. I've got a spritzing water bottle. I'm just going to raise the grain and take it back down before I dye it. Just give it a light mist. Actually, I might go ahead and take this off the chuck, since I'll be hand sanding that anyway. So let's just go ahead and do that and be done with it. I don't like to finish on the lathe. I know a lot of people do. It's just not my preference. So once I hand sand this, I'll probably that's when I'll dye it off the lathe. Okay, bear with me as I try out something new with the table in front of the lathe, and the color's a little bit off, but I'm still working on that mixing software on figuring out how to do this chroma keying, which turns the background into something other than green, which is kind of distracting. All right, so in any case, I have taken this platter and I have dyed it with a black dye, front and back, except for the very bottom. I want it to look like wood. Now I'm going to play with some colors. First thing I need to do is, of course, put on my nitrile gloves, because you get this dye on your skin and it's going to be there a while. And I don't want that. I got to tell you, I don't know what I'm doing when it much comes to mixing colors or playing with dyes, so this is going to be an experiment. But I've got a color wheel to help me out a little bit, and I'm going to start with a little red. Red and black. Red on black should look like a little bit like ox blood. But the first thing I want to do is I want to kind of sand it back a little bit. So I'm going to take some 240 grit, and I'm just going to sand back a little bit in a few spots. Now I'm going to use, there's lots of different dyes you can use. You can use water dye, or you can use an alcohol-based dye. I'm going to use an alcohol-based dye because I happen to have some on hand. Of course, I've got some trans tint that you got to mix, but I'm using Chromacraft. It's already pre-mixed, and it's got about I think 10% shellac in it, so it dries very quickly. But so first thing I'm going to do is open this thing up, and I'm going to put, whoa, close the lid on that. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little pad I just tore off strips of paper towel and folded it several times. Another technique that a tip I got from Sam Angelo is I got these daubers, so I think maybe I'll try those to kind of, wow, absorb the dye pretty quick. I don't know. If I'm not careful, it'll dry too fast, and then I've got some problems. So I think sometimes there's some advantages of some water dye because the water doesn't go quite as fast. So now I've got kind of a splotchy look. So I think what I'm going to do is use a little more dye and go for more red. And red will be pretty, I think. Well, I'm bummed out. One of the things I wanted to show you was the leafing that I was going to do to the center, and something happened to the camera, and I didn't catch it until I was finished, ready to video, and found out that the footage wasn't there. But here's what I'm just going to walk through the process. I seal this with some shellac. Actually, I seal the whole thing with some cellulose lacquer sanding sealer for our base coat. Then I use, in effect, what's a sizing for this. It's some type of water-based solution, and you use a little brush, you put it on, and you wait until it gets tacky. Then you use this metallic leaf. This is not gold gilding leaf. It's something much cheaper. It's called Speedball metal leaf, and it's a variegated leaf. In other words, it's got these different colors in it, which adds certainly a different level of interest. And I stopped it right at that recess that I made for the chuck, so it makes for a fairly clean separation. If I hadn't have done that, it would have been a little more of a challenge, I think, getting a nice smooth edge. Well, you spread it in by hand, press it down pretty good, and then you use a brush or a finger to just kind of work it in, and then you come back with a stiffer brush and just start cleaning up the edges, and there you go. Let it dry. And I've since gone back. I used some shellac, some spray shellac to kind of seal this, and then I'm finishing the outside of this with Minwax antique oil. I've got a couple of coats, but I'm going to put a couple more on before I buff it. So you take some of the little bits and pieces that come off, and you save those. You can buy it in flakes, but save those little bits, and you can reuse those later. If you missed part 1 of this 2-part series, click here for the link to that other video. Thanks for watching. Y'all stay safe. Come on back here.